Carol, would you do the flag salute, please? Roll call.
Silent roll call has been taken and a quorum is present.
Approval of minutes, July 15th, 2019, special council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Petitions, communications, and citizens' requests. Is there any? Yes, sir. Go for it.
Good evening. My name's Gary Greenleaf. I live at 555 Stillwater Avenue across from Bangor Savings Bank. I'm just trying to get some direction here. I have a lot of requests on how I could go about getting a dog park built and started in Old Town. And if I would like to get in front of you, if you could give me some direction on how to get started on this, the process I need to go through, it would be gratefully appreciated.
Dave Russell's the man you want to talk to, I believe.
Dave Russell?
The guy in the orange shirt right there.
Oh, okay.
That's what we can figure out for you.
Okay, and then I can get back to you.
You may not even have to get back to us. He may lead you right through it to a finality.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Gracias. Yep, thank you.
Yep. Any other citizens' requests or otherwise? Reports. I have nothing. Standing committees, Finance, Public Administrative, Economic Services, Landfill, Legislature, Sewer, Airport, and Housing Subcommittees. City Councilors.
Yes. I had a complaint given to me about a drain on this 105 7th Street that backs up to the school property. At one time, it belonged to the city, and there's a drain there, and that drain doesn't even run anymore. And she wondered if anything could be done about it.
Okay.
105?
Yes,
105 7th Street.
yes.
Are we doing revision energy here or under number one?
Yeah, number one.
Number
Yep.
one. Any other councilors?
So we would do it right now. Yep.
Want to do it right now?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Do we have a presentation from,
Yes, Kurt, if you want to come on up.
have a seat right there?
Thank you very much. My name is Kurt Penny. I'm from Revision Energy. Hi, Jan. How are you? Thank you for having me here today. I'm here specifically to talk about the opportunities to develop solar power. It seems like a conversation we've heard more and more these days, and we've looked at other communities and wondered why and how and where and how does it all happen? What are the benefits? What are we waiting for? What are we hoping for? What will we need to make those types of decisions as a town, as a municipality, as a state, as a country? And where we are today, quite frankly, the reason I'm sitting here in front of you is because we have a new solar policy in the state of Maine. And quite frankly, to cut right to the chase, the new solar policy has incentivized the value of a net metered solar credit almost double of what it was worth before. The end result is that we can now paint beneficial financial savings for municipalities, nonprofits, and other organizations. The difference here is we are no longer forced to put the solar power behind the meter. Does anybody know what that means, behind the meter versus So behind the meter would require actual wires to connect to an existing meter. The hope there would be that if you put it on your home, for instance, that when the sun shined, it would reduce your actual demand at your home. This is how the state was designed to accept solar power. We now have the limitations taken off the solar industry, which translates to we are now able to build a remote, large-scale solar farm somewhere within or without your outside of your own town or city, and net meter solar credits to your various electric bills. Everybody with me so far, or a little confusing, right? So this means, as opposed to having to look at this building, for instance, to say, okay, Old Town, what do you got? Well, we've got the fire station, and we've got a building down here, and we've got a little lot in the corner, and we're going to try to get all of these behind the meter and try to figure out how we can offset our demand. Now we can actually aggregate all of the town's electric bills, all of the town's electric bills, schools, water, fire, sewer, municipal. Aggregate these bills and actually design and build an off-site solar farm that will provide net metering credits, dollar credits to your bill. So how does it work? How do you win? Okay, you get money, but obviously you got to pay for something. Here's how it works. The cost of a power purchase agreement that we've been selling to other municipalities, believe it or not, hasn't really changed that much. The value proposition for the solar has basically stayed the same. But what's changed is the value of the net metered credit. So now, here in Old Town, the value of a medium general service or a medium commercial account, for instance, a larger account, water facilities, schools, your elementary schools, your other schools, all are on a medium commercial bill. And in the past, we're only be able to get about 8 cents worth of value. Now, 15.4 cents worth of value. And that is what it's worth today. That rate is determined based off of a small general service rate, which means as rates increase over time, which we expect them to, yes, they'll increase and decrease as we go, but over the course of time, we've seen historically electric rates rise. So as they rise, the value of that net metered credit, of which you will be receiving on your electric bill, will also rise. But your power purchase agreement payment remains fixed. So you can lock in your long-term electric costs, your electric rates, and that is a truly arbitrage, as you will. For instance, I'll give you some general rules. Imagine a power purchase agreement being sold to you at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and you receive 15.4 cents on your electric bill. That is a net benefit to the town of over 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And my estimation is a town like this, between schools, municipalities, all the different, we're looking at what could be several million kilowatt hours, if not, if you include the schools, it could be several million kilowatt hours. Well, 1 million kilowatt hours times a nickel is $50,000 a year in savings. What's the risk? The sun doesn't shine, I suppose, is a risk. The equipment doesn't work, but we have an investor investing in the equipment who is making sure that this equipment works. The world comes to an end and you don't get your solar, what are you doing? Then you're right back to paying the utility the same way you've been paying the utility in the past. What I'm suggesting is we have an opportunity now to sell the town a fixed rate power purchase agreement with no investment. It is nothing short of just a different way to purchase power. You do not have to site the system. You do not have to permit the system. You don't have to apply for the permitting or DEP wetlands delineations, nothing. All you're doing is signing a long-term power purchase agreement. And what do you get in return? You get the satisfaction of a Maine-based, it must be within your utility territory, so it's not going to be very far away, but it would be sited in a more of an industrial area typically, with three-phase power, built to a larger scale with larger economies of scale, as opposed to building 48 kilowatts on the fire station roof. We're building 4 or 5 megawatts on an abandoned piece of property. So here we have an opportunity to take advantage of economies of scale, take advantage of a new program initiated and signed by the governor that will take place immediately, and have a long-term opportunity to lock in your electric rates, which gives you stability and savings. The risk, of course, is that the cost of power would go down. And if we were to sell a kilowatt hour at 10 cents delivered, it would be difficult to remember when it was 10 cents to find a kilowatt hour delivered here in Old Town. So your risk seems pretty mitigated in that respect. I'm not dismissing the risk. There still is. You're signing a 20-year deal or even a 25-year deal. That's not something you take lightly, no matter how wonderful it sounds. So there's no question that this is something you'd have to consider. This is something you'd have to really understand. But the reality here is what we're getting here is the benefits of a program that is designed to accelerate solar commercial development in the state of Maine. And we are here saying, let's take advantage of that. Let's take advantage of that. There are 3 basic buckets of solar development. The first bucket, and the most important bucket in this program, is what we call the off-taker. You guys. The towns, the schools, the large businesses, the universities, the hospitals. These are the largest users of electricity in the state. And in order for this project or program to work, the state requires an off-taker. We cannot just pump the power back on the grid and get paid a fixed rate. We need somebody to actually send those net metering credits to. So the off-taker is a critical part of this program. The second is land. We need land. So we're actively searching for, as well as other solar companies, I can assure you, are actively searching for appropriate, developable, easily accessible, permittable land. And obviously that includes lease options, purchase options, long-term lease payments, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, the third bucket is the investor bucket. Somebody has to own this thing. And when we're talking about a 4 or 5 megawatt system, we're talking about $8 or $10 million worth of development. So this is not somebody entering into this lightly. This is somebody who's actually investing because they believe in the technology. They have seen the technology work for the last 20 years while these types of power purchase agreements have been in practice. Now we're seeing this as nearly 80% of all solar development in the world is third-party ownership development, because it is very, very complex to own and operate a solar system. It does not mean you couldn't do it. You own a lot of complex things. You run fire departments and police departments and all kinds of other things. It's nothing to do with being able to. It's, do you have the bandwidth? Do you want to be in charge of an $8 million asset? And typically the answer is, you know what, we're in charge of enough. What we'd really like to do is take advantage of the savings without having to go to the taxpayers to borrow money. And so now we have an opportunity really in the state of Maine where we can walk down the street or across the county and literally kick the tires of the system that will be absolutely sending you net metering credits. So it's not a foreign Nebraska wind farm or Florida something or another, or gasification plant in Tennessee. This will be local solar power. Local jobs, local installers, local electricians, local operations and management and maintenance folks. Our company has 250 people working. We're rated the #1 solar company in New England. These are the types of folks that are working in this industry to try to make a significant difference. And you notice that I haven't said anything about climate change or anything else. We're assuming that we recognize the urgency. We'll leave it at that. But here we really don't need to have a conversation about anything but the financial opportunities. This is an appliance. It's an appliance. It's not magical technology. It's not green technology. It's an electric system that generates electricity from the sun. It's science, and it works really, really well. And we can predict what it's going to manufacture, what it's going to produce on a long-term basis. I sat in a meeting in Aroostook County. I was sitting with a group of farmers, and I was just telling them the same thing, how unbelievably amazing it is to me that we can actually predict what the weather is going to be, how much solar resources we'll get, what it will produce. And one of the farmers looked at me and said, "Kurt, we've been doing that for generations." All right, so this is not new. We've been growing hay, we've been growing potatoes, we've been growing all kinds of things in the state of Maine. We recognize on a day like today what makes Maine special. We have the same production on an on a year-round basis as Houston, Texas, because we don't have the heat. Photovoltaics prefer to work at a cooler temperature. So we are well situated. We have been from a technological perspective. We're well suited from a land perspective. I can assure you, our friends to the south in Massachusetts, land is much harder to find. We also have an incredible opportunity from a legislative perspective. The solar industry has been thwarted for the last 8 years. This is an opportunity to take advantage. And this is an opportunity for not just the town. This is for everyone in the town. This is for schools. This is for fire departments. This is a way to just save money with no upfront payment by recognizing you can actually count on dollars produced by the sun. What do you think?
Questions?
How many communities are looking at this, seriously looking?
Without sounding silly, I would say every community is now looking at
They're
this.
looking at it,
I would say
they don't have
every
commitments?
Yeah, not commitments yet. This is new. You've been on the books for a while, and so this is just part of our ongoing outreach. We've worked with literally hundreds of towns across Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. We've entered into certainly dozens and dozens of power purchase agreements. We have aligned investors that are not just investing because it's good to make a buck, but actually investing for the right reasons, that this is well situated because you have great credit. So let's not forget, a long-term investment in a municipality offers great long-term credit opportunity, and it's going to be providing incredible environmental benefits. One of the most exciting opportunities, if it's important to the town, which I'm sure it is the fact that the environmental benefit actually has a dollar value. It's called a renewable energy credit or a renewable energy certificate. And that in the past has been worth up to 5 or 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Pretty significant value. It's valued at less than a penny now. So one of the options for the town would be to actually consider either negotiating for it or paying for the actual environmental benefits, the actual green attributes of the solar system, in addition to just the dollar savings. Again, it's not like I'm trying to sneak something in, or the rust proofing when you're buying your new car, or it's that this is now, because of the lack of financial value, it can make sense to actually be able to claim. And again, for millions of kilowatt hours, it's substantial. It can offset a major portion. So I would say you're probably talking for a megawatt of solar somewhere in the vicinity of the equivalent of 250,000 gallons of gasoline a year. That's pretty significant when you look at school buses and fire trucks and police cars and everything else. All of a sudden, to be able to actually say, we're not just saving money, but we're actually taking advantage of this, and we're retiring these wrecks, or we're cashing them as it were, to say we're offsetting the carbon offset. So just, again, these are opportunities for the town. Don't know if it's important to the town. If it's strictly a financial decision, it's absolutely okay. We're comfortable with that decision. The opportunity is in the long-term savings. While there's certainly nothing wrong with a nickel today, that sounds pretty darn good to me. The idea is by locking in your solar rate, that value will continue to rise. So that if we really expect the value of power to go up 2.5% a year is a historical rate. If we model that and you look out 10, 15, 20 years, the value is mind-boggling. 12, 14, 15 cent differential. So that value to the town continues in the benefit of the town, not to the investor.
Is the land given by the town for to put the, wherever you put the
We are,
station?
it's,
Gonna be
you know,
built?
great, it's great. One of the three buckets is the land bucket. If it was easy, we'd be like, chopped liver, but it's not easy. It's difficult to find appropriate land that's well suited for solar, that has the right,
So does the city have to own the land?
you do not. You do not. And that's one of the neat things, that if you did, let's just say that you had a wonderful piece of property, the old such and such, the old dump down there, or the old, DPW barn that has 15 acres of flat property, let's just say. And you said, that site is something that we're not doing. What it would do is actually provide another revenue stream, because the investor is leasing land. So what this offers is, hey, you have an opportunity as a town to do this from a remote perspective. You can simply say, you know what, we really don't want to host it. We don't really want to hear from the people driving by whose view has been, interrupted, or this is where we used to walk the dog, or that, we just don't want to get into that, because we're talking about a pretty substantial 10, 15, 20 acres of solar modules. It's a large and meaningful installation. So in that case, you could simply say, we want to fill one of the other buckets, which is just off-taker. And the solar power system would be located in a different town within your same utility. So within the Amera Bangor Hydro area.
Other
Yes,
questions?
yes, Jan.
Jan?
I've been thinking about this a great deal, and you mentioned to me the possibility of the airport, which is a wide open space, and the sun, there's nothing to obstruct it, because the airplanes can't have it either. And I think, and from my perspective, that might be something to look into.
And this is meant to simply introduce you to this idea. Where I'm not looking to sign anything or go, what we have are a couple of really exciting next steps, which includes what Jan is talking about. The opportunity to, if this passes the straight face test, if you like the general idea here, we can look down a path of looking within the town. Are there appropriate places? Is there, whether it's the airport or the old DPW or this 15 acres that we bought in 1947? If there is a place like that, we would be thrilled to look at it as a development site. Interestingly enough, we could build that system, provide power to you and also to the next town over, right? Because we're allowed to do that now. So whether or not, if we build this in Orono and send power to Old Town, or we build it in Old Town and send power to Orono, you can do that. So this gives us great flexibility. So next steps, quite frankly, because this is not our first rodeo, is really recognizing what you would do as a council to select a vendor. Would you look at this like a typical RFP process? Would you look at this, as several towns are doing, as an energy procurement process, where with no upfront investment, with no local development, You don't necessarily go through the same requirements as a typical RFP. That, I would suggest, would be the first step. First, it has to make sense. You like the idea. Second is really understanding how are you going to pick a long-term solar partner. I have nothing against people from New Jersey. I don't. I really don't. My in-laws are from New Jersey. It's a beautiful place. But you have to question. You must question. Do you want people from New Jersey providing your local power? And it's not because there's anything wrong with people from New Jersey. It's because in New Jersey, we let people in New Jersey install solar. And here we can provide local backup. We've been here for 15 years. We are Maine's #1 solar installer. And we believe we can actually provide not just the technical know-how, but the financial strength to get this built. Many people will call. Many people will start to knock on your door. I can assure you. This is why I'm mentioning the RFP or RFQ or single source partnership, because that's going to be the biggest decision. Like so many other things, and we don't have to get into the grand scheme of things, but like so many things, this too will begin to fade away. The incentives are strongest now and will begin to be squeezed by the industry. So I'm here because Jan had called many, many moons ago. We've discussed this well before the governor signed the new bill, and you happen to be on the schedule. So you're really, this Wednesday, I am speaking at Sugarloaf. Are you going to Sugarloaf? I'm speaking at Sugarloaf in front of the Maine municipal something or another.
Managers.
Yes. And, there will be hundreds of managers there listening to this for the first time. So this is not meant to be an arm twist or a scare tactic or anything, but this really is an excellent opportunity. This is not something that comes along as we've seen. We've never seen it here in the state of Maine. This bill was designed to promote 400 megawatts worth of commercial solar installations. Right now in the state, we have about 10. So this is going to be an exciting change. You have an opportunity to take advantage because you happen to hold one of those 3 key buckets, which is the off-taker bucket. So obviously treat that with care, right? But recognize that your best deal is going to be your soonest deal, whether that's with us or any other company, while the program remains in the early phases. So that would be my recommendation. Decide who you want to work with and how you want to determine who you want to work with and how you want to work with them. Make sure that everybody's okay with it. Choose your partner and then start working. Because it's not fair for anybody to kind of start providing all the work and then you go out to the market with that. So I strongly advise, if you're like building a building, you choose your GC before or your architect before you build. This is a similar discussion. Choose your architect before you build. Who can do it? Who can actually manage? Who can give you references from dozens of towns to speak to their town managers, to speak to their DPW people, to speak to water facility people, you name it, north, south, limestone to Kennebunk. We have worked, and our legacy really is our bond. So I'll leave you with that. Any other questions or concerns?
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much for coming.
My
Kurt.
pleasure, my pleasure.
Should we put this on a committee for the next meeting? Pardon?
There's a council item coming up where you can.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about that right here and not on, as part of the agenda. We're gonna do it again as part of the agenda?
It's just in there to say that you did this, that you heard this presentation tonight. It's not to vote on anything or approve
Right.
anything tonight.
I think I'd rather put it at the next meeting and do a little research in between, so I understand it better.
Yeah, I mean, if you want RFPs done, I mean, that's our standard operating procedure, so that's not a problem. I mean, I can reach out, obviously, to these folks and 2 or 3 other companies if that's what you want to do. That's fine.
How do you people feel? You wanna do that before the next meeting, to discuss it at the next meeting, to see which way we want to go, or how are you people feeling?
We're doing a little research and
Yeah, I'd rather think about it a little bit first and get a little more information before we put any RFPs out or do anything. like
Put it
that.
on a committee, yep.
Discuss it on the 16th
Yep.
and decide what direction we're gonna go from there.
And I'd be happy as a, part of your fact finding, if there's something I can provide. You guys have my email. I'll certainly leave a few business cards if you wanted to reach out to me. If there's anything I can provide from a legislative perspective or some sort of clarifications or.
Yeah, I'd like a little better understanding on the 15.4 cents versus the 10.9 cents and how those two interact.
Great, yep, I can do that. It's a little too much for
Yeah.
just a
Well, I'd
conversation
probably
like
digest
this.
it better if I was reading it anyway.
I would agree. So,
Yeah.
what I can basically do is put together, I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's a little flowery for this arrangement, but I can extract some of the critical points and put them on a sheet. I don't think it would be
That'd be
any,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
any kind of specific stuff that you can't share or anything that wouldn't be public. So I would consider it just educational.
Okay.
All right?
Can you give
Excellent.
us any idea of how many people are actually getting their solar power now in Maine?
From a, we have personally, our company has installed over 8,000 systems in the state of Maine.
Commercial and residential?
Mostly residential, of course. But commercial has 3 years ago was 20% of our business. It will now be 60% of our business. So we are making some pretty incredible strides from our best salesperson has been the governor. The phone we are actually sold out of residential solar for 2019 at this point. So
You had it long enough that you could give us, not tell us the town or anything, but how much some of the town, for example, how many kilowatts, whatever they have to have compared to us, and how much that would cost as compared to some of the other towns?
yeah, I
the
mean,
same size.
it's very difficult. It's very difficult to throw a dart and say this is what, because what happens is we're negotiating, we end up negotiating or putting a marker in the sand, and this is where, and if we come out with 10.9 cents and it turns out to be 11.1, people are upset. So we have to be careful. I'm using numbers that I believe are conservative. I believe, you believe it or not, we could actually do better, but I'm a sales guy, so, promise less, deliver more type of thing. I would be more comfortable at this stage providing what I would consider extremely good indicative information, of which then you can look at your own bills, or if you wanted to provide me with a copy of a bill, I can kind of walk you through your own process. But if you wanted to just get a kind of an overview, I would show you an indicative arrangement, something that I would consider very, very close to being real. And from that, I mean, I could do it as a range, but I think the idea is pretty clear. And I'm not saying, 10 cents when I really mean 13 cents. This is a range that we're looking at somewhere between 8.5 and 11 cents. So, and what does it mean? If you have your own land and we don't have to pay lease payments for your solar system, that's a savings. Boom, we just saved a penny or a half a penny. So, these types of things, if the land is easy, if the town is paying a higher rate. So these types of things will determine what your final PPA rate would be. But I think I can provide enough that you can look at this and really make a determination. I get it. It makes sense. Here's some actual places to look online, so you don't have to believe what I'm saying. Here's some indicative stuff and some actual quotes from town managers. Again, once you want to get into it, one of the things to consider is a request for qualifications versus a request for proposals, because even request for proposal, I'm not sure what I'm proposing. I'm not taking it all the way through the investor phase before I give you my best RFP price. So the real question is, an RFQ, does that satisfy the committee? Does that satisfy everybody so that we can look at what qualifications are you bringing to the table and what makes you qualified to do this project for us? And we would suggest that, in that particular case, there is no one more qualified, because we can bring in what we do best. If we were in New Jersey or in Philadelphia, we would be struggling. But here, we've built the largest solar company, the strongest solar company in the state of Maine. So again, many towns are looking at the RFQ process, basically saying, we're going to pick our partner, we're going to pick our architect, then we're going to start to design the building, as opposed to starting to design the building yourself and then having somebody come in and say, well, I would suggest the foundation on the bottom, not on the top, and so it just makes it, in this case, to me, it would make sense to identify who you'd like to work with. Are we local enough? Is there another company that's more local that you would prefer to work with or offers you something that we don't? That's fine. Choose that company and then say, okay, here's what we got. Here's all our bills. This is what we're trying to do. What do we got? What can we do? Where can we go? What can we do together to actually maximize our delta, maximize our long-term benefits, or short-term benefits if you really wanted to. But, I suggest this is a long-term play.
Is the life expectancy of the panels more than 20 years?
40-year design life. We actually have the investor will take this through typically a 25-year PPA is what they're trying. They will do a 20-year, but they prefer to do a 25-year. It coincides with the warranties on all the solar equipment. But after that, they usually have 2 5-year options to take it to 35 years. So we expect at year 35 about 75 to 80% of efficiency still at that point. So, and that's if you're building a lot of megawatts worth of power, that's still a lot of power. So I kind of equate it to the old Volvo station wagon. It has no value unless you have a teenager who's driving a Volvo station wagon, right? Then it has tremendous value. That's kind of the same thing. You got an old cash cow, somebody owns it, you guys are saving a ton of money in 2042 based on the same conversation. It's a great opportunity.
Other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for hearing me out.
You stimulated some conversation.
I'm glad of that, and I'll touch base with Bill, and we can decide what you guys
Yep.
need and what the best.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Attorney?
Not at this time, thank you.
Special committees? City Manager?
Several things. First off, we have Jeff Letourneau's here tonight. Just wanted to kind of give you folks an update on OTO fiber and where it stands. So if we could have Jeff come up, that'd be great.
Good evening.
Good
Jeff
evening.
Letourneau, Penobscot Street in Old Town. As Bill was saying, we thought, Old Town Orono Fiber Corporation, thought it'd be good to give you folks a bit of an update where we stand on our project, given we're about to go into under contract to do the construction of the pilot that we've been working on. There's some faces here that weren't around when we started many years ago, it feels like. I forget, 4 or 5 years anyways, a long time ago. But basically, the City of Old Town, the Town of Orono, and the University of Maine formed a 501c3 corporation under an interlocal agreement to find ways to build fiber optic infrastructure in the 2 communities for high-speed broadband. High-speed broadband is defined as faster than what you typically get today, with no greater definition than that. The goal from the university side, and which I work for, is really to be able to bring the opportunity to have the same level of connectivity when you're home or in your apartment as you have on campus. One of the things that we have found is as you look at trying to spur on entrepreneurship in small business and startups, and have them leave the nice cradle of the university out into the communities, they've struggled to find the level of connectivity that they've either enjoyed on campus or over the former Target Tech, I forget what it's called these days, but the incubator centers in the area and around the state. So we created this corporation. There's 9 board members, 3 from each entity. 2 from Orono are here today with me, Bruce Siggy and Casey Lagarde. And
Old Town.
What did I say?
Orono.
Oh, I just did this last week, so my mind's mixed up. From Old Town, Bruce Siggy and Casey Lagarde. And right now, Travis Roy is sitting in the 3rd seat for Old Town. I represent the university, and there's a couple of gentlemen from the university as well. And obviously, Orono has the same contingent. 4 years ago, I think it is now, we received a Northern Borders Region Commission grant from the federal government. It's about $250,000 grant, in which the 2 communities chipped together to come up with the match, both in kind and cash, and to do a pilot project. And that pilot project goal was to install about 3 miles of infrastructure in both communities, so 6 miles total. Many RFPs and RFQs and whatnot since. We are now to the point where we're actually finalizing the selection of a construction firm to build out that pilot. I say many because we were hoping to do a design build, and NVRC required us to split that up. So we had to do a design process and a build process. We had hoped to do construction this summer, but we found, we put out an RFP, and the bid that came back was beyond our means. It was more than the grant and the match would fund. In speaking with the contractor, he said, you're paying a lot more because you're doing this summer. If it was winter time during our slow period, our flagger costs, our labor costs tend to be much lower. So we went back to NBRC, and they said, well, if you want to do something like that, you got to put it out to bid again. So yet another process. So we've done that. We received back a bid to do that construction in Old Town. To describe it, the 3 miles that were selected, basically, if you start out on Stillwater Avenue by the Tradewinds gas station and come back into town, down Center Street, and so that's the route down into downtown. Most of downtown is covered, and the streets in between, or that make up Old Town, downtown, and over as far over as Stillwater Avenue, up as far as Brunswick Street. So around the Old Town Canoe Factory property, all of downtown here. across Center Street, not very far. I think we go as far as Camden National Bank, and then up the Stillwater corridor. Those were the 3 miles selected, largely because this is an economic development grant, and that's what NBRC is all about. So we're focused on the growth area and the commercial areas. Though there are some residential areas that or households that we're going to obviously be able to pick up along Stillwater Avenue and whatnot. We had also put out in the RFP 2 what we called alternative neighborhoods, hoping that the bids would come in low enough that we might be able to do more with the grant than just those original 3 miles per community. We haven't turned out to be that lucky. Oh well. But one of the things, by doing that, we have a really good sense now of the 2 neighborhoods that we selected, what the future cost might be if we ever have an opportunity to expand into those areas. And what we did is we selected different kinds of neighborhoods, well, to tell you what we selected was the basically numbered streets between Perkins and Center Street. It's a high density area, lots of households per telephone pole, that kind of thing. And the other area that we selected was basically Blueberry Hill. The houses are a bit spread farther out. It's a bit of a build to get there. So we wanted to get a sense of what the difference costs would be for that. So with an eye to the future, we've got that information now, but we're just not going to be able to act on it as part of this initial build. The bid that we did get in came in substantially lower, with it being built this winter, December, January timeframe. Low enough that not only can we afford it, but it's a not to exceed bid, but we still wanted some contingency there for things that we discover that during construction that might not have been contemplated. And we have a bit more than 12% contingency available in that to cover any kind of unknown. So we're much more comfortable with that. The end result we're hoping is, or what we expect to do is, we don't want OTO Fiber or Old Town or Orono or even the university, don't want to be an ISP. We don't want to be the retail service provider. What we're trying to do is build the infrastructure which the service providers, whoever they end up being, have something over which they can deliver retail service. Right now, cable company, that's a proprietary fiber coax infrastructure. Nobody else is allowed to use it. It's theirs. The telephone company with their copper for your telephone, regulatorily, they have to make it available, but it's so antiquated. Modern technology, even the best DSL of the world today, technology of the world today, can't deliver the high-speed capacity that's necessary. So it's really, while the ISPs have access to it, it's not worth a heck of a lot to it. So what this fiber optics does is give a long-term viable infrastructure for ISPs to be able to lease from OTO Fiber over which they can deliver service. And that's really the whole thing, is trying to create a bit of a marketplace here over which retail service providers have the ability to deliver service. So, as I said, we're hopefully in the next few weeks be signing contracts and getting everything lined up. Construction this winter, hopefully with service starting sometime in spring. And obviously have another RFP to run to solicit qualifications and bids and whatnot from various ISPs to see who might be interested. Any questions? I know that was a lot faster than the previous presentation, but I don't have a sales background, so.
Questions?
Sounds great. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So are they gonna be able to charge that much more, or is it gonna be like a regular charge and you just pick up the extra speed?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, nobody's going to want to pay more than what they already pay today, right? So the way we're structuring it, the benchmark today is really what you pay Spectrum, right? You get a 100 meg service for roughly $65. You have to be meaningfully different. So delivering a 100 meg service for $65, other than people who don't like the cable company, that's not enough. I mean, there's a barrier to change, right? It's not enough to do anything, convince anybody to change. What we're looking at and what should be available is be able to provide, like I said, the level of connectivity we're used to on campus, which is gigabit speeds, to the desktop or the dorm room or whatever it may be, to the lab, to the residential and commercial businesses, in that same ballpark of that $65 residential cost. If we can do it and the retail service provider makes enough profit to do it for less, all the better. But clearly, the way the retail service providers price their service is not based off of cost plus. And that's not their model. Their model is what's the absolute most we can get out of the consumer to maximize our profit. That's just good business. I don't think
But
these.
we're also providing their infrastructure for them.
Yes, but they're leasing it. And what we're using for a model for that, it's much like if they used the copper pairs from the telephone company. The telephone company has to lease those pairs of copper to an ISP to provide DSL service. There's a fixed dollar amount for that, depending on telephone companies. There's too many lawyers, so there's multiple fixed dollars. But if you're in an urban area, it's $20. If you're semi-urban, which I don't know what that is, it's a little bit less. But there's a business model that these ISPs have come up with, saying, hey, to get to somebody's home, I'm going to pay $20 to have access to it. We're going to use the same kind of model with OTO fiber, but it's going to be a fiber optic strand of glass rather than a pair of copper. So it should fit into the current business models. They're going to be able to deliver a lot faster service over it, much more reliable service than what they can over the copper pairs.
So they're going to lease that from you guys?
OTO5, yeah.
So then you'll use that money to expand?
Wouldn't that be nice?
You mind going out to supper on it?
No. Well, ideally, yes. The challenge we will have is a pilot. It's only 6 miles, so I forget the numbers now, but there's 300 maybe parcels that we go by. At $20 a pop. There's a little bit of money there.
Yep.
And by the year 2082, we might be done with Old Town and Orono, just building out as those revenues come. So one of the things that we've done is we engaged a group, a foundation that spun out of Harvard called the Post Road Foundation, to do a they called it a pre-feasibility study, but basically come up with business models on which how could a full community, not just this little pilot, but all of Old Town, all of Orono, and even Indian Island, what would that cost, and how would one structure themselves to be able to attract some equity investors to come in and help do that? Not piecemeal, bit by bit, but actually come in and have more patient capital investors come in and be able to do that sort of thing. The results of that have been fairly promising, but it also made all of us on the board realize, well, we don't have the financial legs to run with this. So one of the things we're looking at is saying, all right, as we get this pilot off the ground and going, we've got to add some expertise to the board and find some others to say, how do we really do this? In the presentation of the final report, one of the things that they talked about is these three communities, well, if you call the Penobscot Nation the communities, the Old Town Orono Penobscot Nation, these three communities roughly would cost somewhere around, I think he used the number somewhere around $12 million. Well, these private capital investment outfits that are looking more for, think of pension funds, think of retirement funds. They're looking for stable, lower rate of returns, but predictable kind of returns. They really want to look at $100 million projects because it's as much work to vet a $20 million project as it is a $100 million project. So started talking with other communities. Post Road also worked with the town of Sanford and a collaborative down east. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm saying. Town of Sanford and a collaborative down east in the Baileyville area as part of their study. All three combined still isn't $100 million. So there is a $30 million bond maybe coming out. Depends if the legislature comes back in session and approves it. At $30 million out of an infrastructure bond for broadband. So one of the things that's been discussed is how can the state, with the Connect Maine Authority that would oversee that bonding, help pull together all the various communities that have initiatives going on in this arena, and to do one larger kind of superstructure, if you want to think of it, to bring something together big enough to do it. So once again, that financial stuff is beyond me. I know more about the fiber than I do about the financials, but we're being engaged. We're at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're not going to partake in it. So
Yep.
that's looking far out.
Perfect. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Mr.
Thank you.
Letourneau.
We had talked a little bit a few meetings ago, kind of getting an update from the state on expanded archery, deer hunt, how that's going. So we have Mark here tonight. I told him I was going to get him right up here when the meeting started, but it's been a little longer than I thought it was going to be. So thank you for your patience. Come on up.
Yeah, my name is Mark Karen. I'm the regional wildlife biologist for the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife out of the Enfield office. And I was involved with this initiative from its onset in 2005. I was asked to come down here tonight, give you an update. There's many new faces up here. So I'm going to start with some background and just so you get a feel for the process that we went through for the better part of almost 6 years before we initiated the hunt full-time in 2011. So I'm just going to read off some bullet points to you, and I'll make time for questions as we go along if you like. So we began in 2005, and the department was approached by both Orono and Old Town to discuss the overpopulation of deer on Marsh Island that was creating a lot of nuisance deer issues, public safety concerns in the form of car deer accidents, and there was also a bit of a concern about Lyme disease. These were all social issues, they weren't biological. In fact, there was a series of meetings back in the 1990s as well regarding the same concerns, and including safety concerns at that time with the deer getting on the airport runways. A petition at that time was signed by over 250 folks and presented to the department requesting the department help to resolve the overpopulation of deer on the island. However, in the long run, after several meetings and such, nothing really came of the effort other than the concerns at the airport were addressed, and I think that had to do more with fencing going up to keep the deer out. But we ended up revisiting in 2005 with the same concerns. So between 2005 and 2007, The department held a series of meetings and public hearings involving both municipalities as well as the university. At the public hearings provided the opportunity for residents to provide input. On the table being proposed was to open the island to hunting. Previously, this island has been closed to hunting, going way back, I think, maybe to the 30s. It was classified as a wildlife management area closed to hunting, so that had to be reversed if we were going to do anything. And then also open an island to hunting, but also include Marsh Island in the already existing Bangor expanded archery area. And if you're not familiar with that, we have areas in the state, several of them, where there are firearm discharge ordinances in place. So trying to control deer numbers is problematic. And we have an expanded archery tool that we use. And the seasons essentially run early September to mid-December. And hunters can only take one antler deer, but they can purchase as many antlerless permits as they wish in an effort to get some control over the deer populations in these more developed parts of the state. However, from the onset, the university opposed any hunting on their ownership. In spite of this, Orono and Old Town, to some extent with diminished support by that time, voted to proceed with the effort to open the island to bow hunting and add the island to the expanded archery area. And we used our department's rulemaking process. We have an advisory council that answers to the commissioner. It's a public process. It's a three-step process, and initiatives are brought forward and go through 3 steps. The public has plenty of opportunity to provide input, and the advisory council makes a decision at the 3rd step. So with this first effort, unfortunately, the Commissioner's Advisory Council voted the effort down, given that the university owned 80% of the land of the island, and there was, again, subsequent diminished support from the municipalities. However, it was decided that the department and the municipalities should continue meeting and moving forward towards some kind of resolution. So in 2008, again, with support from both Orono and Old Town, the department initiated what we had was emergency rulemaking. So we moved it forward, we put it on the front burner, and we moved it forward to open the island to bow hunting, but only via a permit system. And that was for the period November 1 through December 30th. So what we did is we worked alongside the Maine Bow Hunters Association, and we utilized their BLIP program, Bow Hunter Landowner Information Program. And these are a cohort of archers that meet higher qualifications, above and beyond your average bow hunter. And clean records, good bow hunters, they pass efficiency tests and such. So the hunt, we used them, and the hunt was overseen by the department, and I kind of spearheaded that, and it was tightly run. So that first year in 2008, there were 2 areas open, the airport and the Penny Road parcel. The hunt occurred December 1 through the 13th. 8 deer were harvested. Very poor second week hunting conditions and limited area probably didn't help, but we got it off the ground. It was decided to repeat the effort in 2009. What the department did ahead of time was, through rulemaking, expanded the hunting season to September 1 to December 31st. We used a BLIP program again, and this time we were able to add private land, and also the town of Orono took part. We moved the hunt back to October 5 to the 24th, so 3 weeks. 46 deer were harvested. And 2010, once again, we utilized the program, and that hunt took place September 27 to October 16. 40 deer were harvested during that time. So what we were trying to do with using the BLIP program was to demonstrate that through archery, you could use it as a management tool and begin to address your concerns regarding overpopulation of deer on the island. So that got us through the early years of meetings and hearings and 3 years of effort with the BLIP program. In 2011, both municipalities formally approved the measure at their respective meetings. Old Town was in June, Orono also in June, later in June. And so we moved forward with rulemaking once again to permanently open Marsh Island to archery hunting and add the island to the expanded archery area. So since 2011, Marsh Island, along with another sliver of land which was already part of the expanded archery area, have been open to expanded archery. Previously, the only part that was open was basically that Bennick Road corridor, so the interstate to the river, right on down. And there was limited opportunity there. It was small, and some of it was owned by the university and whatnot. But, so that's the background. Any questions to that point? So what I asked my dear biologist, our dear biologist, if he could find some time and crunch some numbers for me, and I explained why I needed it. So what he did was he took, and I'll get into some of this, he took the 4 previous years to 2011, and then the first 4 years of the hunt, and looked at the data. He was able to tease out antlerless harvest versus the overall harvest. And so we could get an idea of before and after. So, I'm just going to read you some numbers. So the before was the 2007, 8, 9, and 10 season. And during that time, altogether, Orono had harvested 23, Old Town 12. And again, that was just that sliver over on the western part. After the island was added to the expanded archery area, Orono went from 23 to 113. That was plus 90. Old Town went from 12 to 177. That's plus 165. And he also threw in Bangor and VZ. VZ had very small numbers, but I can read these to you so you get some idea. Bangor has been in the expanded archery for a long time now, but so on a yearly basis, Bangor in 11, 35, 35, 38, and 39 those first 4 years. Compared that with Old Town, we had 62 and 11, 40 and 12, 42 and 13, and 33 and 14. Orono went from 41, 30, 17, and 25. So I would expect the last 4 years to be similar numbers to what I just read off on an annual basis, taking into account deer populations, hunter effort, hunting conditions, things like that. But clearly it shows that we were accomplishing what we set out to accomplish, and that was to harvest more deer in an effort to resolve as best as possible the social concerns that folks had here on the island. Any questions on that part of it? Okay. He also looked at, he tried to spend some time on a few other areas, deer vehicle collisions, Lyme disease cases, and nuisance reports. Now, the Lyme disease and the nuisance reports were very small numbers, so you really can't derive much from those. Deer vehicle collisions, he had better data on. There's a system that's called the Spillman system, so your law enforcement reports into that on deer vehicle collisions. They all go into this database, whether it's any law enforcement, it all goes in there. So actually with deer vehicle collisions for those first 4 years, they actually went up slightly. Let's see, before in Old Town, we had 77 for those 4 years, 07 through 10. Afterwards, we had 104, so it went up 35%. It averaged 19 before, 26 after. What it is these last 4 years, I'm not sure. Orono saw a slight decrease. They went from 65 before to 58, so down 11%. And they were averaging 16 before and 14 after. So what it's doing now, I'm not sure in these last few years, but if you were curious about that, you could request from your own law enforcement to look into that Spillman system, and they could tell you what the numbers are. I also reached out to the local game warden, Jim Fahey, and Jim could not be here tonight, but he sent me an email with his thoughts. He felt in general that he is dealing with less deer-related conflicts now than prior to. And he stated that he thought those first couple of years of the hunt, there was a great learning curve. So people you had an ordinance in place, so they had to get comfortable with the ordinance. They had to get permission to hunt on lands. They had to find pieces of land. So those first few years were a bit hectic, and there was a lot of people. I mean, they came out of the woodwork from all over the state to come here and hunt. And of course, you had some very big, mature trophy bucks running around. So there was quite a bit of effort and whatnot those first few years, but it's settled out since then, in Jim's opinion. He used to get calls regarding injured deer, fawns dropped in flower beds and on lawns, damage to vegetable gardens, ornamental bushes, etc. were fairly frequent. I don't seem to feel as many of those types of calls now. Again, there was a steep learning curve in the early days, but that has settled out. Usual knuckleheads here and there that he had to deal with, but overall, like I said, things got better. And he just deals with issues as they come up. But in general, he feels that his complaints have gone down. I also reached out to some of the bow hunters that I know hunt out here, and they just had a few comments kind of similar, so I'll just read through those. Again, lots of hunters, particularly the first few years, and then settled out. So there was a lot of competition from archers, but a lot of those came and went, and a lot of it, you just get a regular group of people that hunt now. Again, took a couple years to learn the area, follow the ordinance. The hunters felt that there are less deer now, and they're not as easy to hunt after the first couple of years. So the deer have figured it out like they usually do. They know where they can go and not be worried about hunting. No different than rifle season. It was their opinion that there was not a lot of private land available. Some of them wanted to consider opening more city land. I don't know if there are other parcels. You seem to break it up on your ordinance. You have area 1, 2, 3, or so. I don't know how much of the city land that is open versus not, but they mentioned some of that. And they felt that the first couple of weeks of the season every year is busy. A lot of hunters out there. But then it settles out after that. And those were the comments I had from them, and that was my background. Do you have any questions?
About how many hunters apply for the permits?
I honestly don't know.
No.
I honestly don't know if they have to. I think they just apply.
And that's through the city? Or do
Well,
they
you
go
have
to you?
permits.
If they want to hunt on our property, they have to
They
get
have to come
permission.
through here.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that, but you would easily have those records. Other than that, when they buy a license and want to archery hunt and expand, it's just more of a general thing. They could be hunting here, they could be hunting down in Bangor, they could be hunting down in Rockland.
Okay, so there's no set.
Yeah, I think, but
Didn't you say they have to pass some kind of test before they're allowed?
that was in the trial period with the BLIP program. So within the Maine Bow Hunters Association, they have this program, and they've used it elsewhere in the state to address the very same types of issues. But they have a cohort of members of the association that go above and beyond, spotless records, proficiency tests. So they're out there and they've got to, whatever their qualifications are, got to hit X number of bullseye out of X number of shots, things like that. So we weren't going to allow anyone out there that couldn't do the job, because we really wanted to show the public and certainly the council and whatnot that bow hunting could be a useful tool.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like the cream of the crop from the Maine bow hunters that we used.
And the herd is healthy?
As far as I know, yeah. It's going to ebb and flow like it always does, population-wise. Of course, they can come and go from the island freely, and they do, which is probably compounds the problem to some extent too. So, but yeah, no particular issues. We took data those 3 years with the BLIP program. We took data on the deer, and we also kept track of other things like how many members of the public were seen out there while they were hunting. And we had no issues in that regard. I mean, we're talking one year 139 people. I think the next year was 200 and something that they saw in a 3-week period. And a lot of it was probably over that Penny Road parcel.
Sure.
With all the trails and whatnot. And I asked that of the hunters too, and they haven't had any issues since. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Very
Vicki.
interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I would do here, so we can get going in the rest of the agenda, is introduce Dana Sibley's in the back of the room. This is the person we hired as the city clerk here. And,
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
She will start on August 26th, and hopefully we can get Michelle a little bit of a break.
Consent agenda. Resolved. Suggested motion, Councilor Brissette.
Resolve, the Old Town City Council hereby approves the consent agenda. New business items 2, 3, and 4 as presented. The Old Town City Council hereby accepts an after-deadline redemption on foreclosed property for Shannon Gallant and Daniel Baker in the amount, for payment of 2016 second quarter through 2019 for sewer fees in the amount of $2,370.79, plus $131.32, and the $150 late redemption fee for a total amount of $2,652.11, and further authorizes the city manager to execute a municipal quitclaim deed. Item number 3. The Old Town City Council hereby accepts an after-deadline redemption on property for Ronald Strout for payment of sewer fees in the amount of $2,962.50 for payment collected December 20, 2018, and further authorizes the city manager to execute a municipal quitclaim deed. And number 4. The Old Town City Council hereby approves the Emera, Maine application dated July 9, 2019, and utility location permit requesting permission to locate certain of its facilities described as Airport Road on pole to be located approximately 1,850 feet northerly of Gilman Falls Avenue, 1 SVC, Carmichael Transport Airport Road, and further authorizes City Manager William J. Mayo to take any and all actions upon such terms and conditions as he deems necessary or appropriate to conclude the Emera, Maine application and utility permit request.
Thank you.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Hearings and second readings of ordinances. The Old Town City Council will conduct a public hearing on a proposal to amend the language of Section 2, Membership A, as shown in Exhibit 1. This proposal was discussed by the Old Town Council during the FY 2019 budget meetings. I would open the public hearing. Mr. Russell.
Dave Russell, Code Officer. As you stated in the order, that was something we discussed about putting stipend money into the planning board budget so that they could be compensated for their service. I didn't realize that we'd have to amend their bylaws, so it's taken this time to get us there.
Questions? Any other comments?
Nope.
I would close the public hearing. The City Council will consider scheduling a second read for final approval on a proposal to amend the language in Section 2, Membership A of the adopted planning board bylaws as shown in Exhibit 1. The proposal was discussed by the Old Town City Council during FY19 budget meetings. Councilor Ketchen.
Resolved, the Old Town City Council hereby schedules second reading at the August 19th, 2019 council meeting for final approval to amend the language in Section 2, Membership A, 4 of the adopted planning board bylaws.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? The Old Town City Council will conduct a public hearing on a proposal to change the official zoning map, specifically tax map 26, lot 15A, as shown in Exhibit 1, and further described in Exhibit 2 from Commercial 1 to Commercial Business to Limited R2 General Residence for the rear two-thirds of the first floor of the structure. This proposal was approved by the Old Town Planning Board at the July 16th, 2019 meeting. I would open the public hearing.
Again, this is similar to what we did for 149 Center Street, 52 Water Street. It just allows Mr. Dubé to site a residential dwelling on a portion of the first floor. He's allowed to have them on the second floor in the downtown area, but this is something different. And he's got a small unit up front for commercial, and he wanted the back unit for residential.
Any questions? Anybody else? I would close the public hearing. Would you mind doing it for Council Mahan, Council Smart?
Sure. Resolved, the Old Town City Council hereby schedules a second reading at the August 19, 2019 council meeting for final approval on proposal by Old Town Planning Board to change the official zoning map, specifically tax map 26, lot 15A, as shown on Exhibit 1 and further described in Exhibit 2, from C1 Commercial Business to Limited R2 General Residence for the rear two-thirds of the first floor of the structure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to take up a couple of items that aren't on the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? The City Council will consider authorizing the city manager to take all necessary steps to secure financing for the fiscal year 2019-2020 road paving projects as presented in the budget.
We received back the results from our request for proposal. We sent it out to 6 banks. One of them declined, and one of them just had a late submission, so they chose not to. Coming back from the 4 banks, you'll see on the paper I passed out earlier the varying interest rates between all the banks. One quoted a 6-month versus, which would be the ban, the first part of the proposal, and then converting it into a 5-year. I reached out to them today to say, okay, we wanted a 5-year as well, and they included their interest rate as well. So based on what we've received back, I would like to recommend that we go with Bangor Savings Bank, which has the lower interest rate out of the ones that were submitted.
So you're saying we do the $47,138.92?
Yeah, that would be the
That's
interest rate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the 530 plus
Yeah.
the interest.
correct.
Yeah. Any questions, comments? Council Ketchin.
Resolved, the Old Town City Council hereby authorizes the city manager to take all necessary steps to secure financing with Bangor Savings Bank for the fiscal year 2019-2020 road paving projects as presented in the budget.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? The city council will approve the order of condemnation for taking of the land off Netto Street, more likely identified as map 31, lot 189, Old Town Penobscot County, Maine, and referenced in detail in the order of condemnation, pages 1 through 4.
Resolved, the Old Town City Council hereby approves the order of condemnation for the taking of land off Netto Street, more readily identified as map 31, lot 189, Old Town, Penobscot County, Maine, and referenced in detail in the order of condemnation, pages 1 through 4.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. You want to talk about that a little bit, Bill?
What we wanted to do is actually table this for tonight, to move that forward. Ed's still working with some folks over there, so we wanted to wait until the next meeting to bring that back.
At your August 19th meeting, I would like it to be an agenda item. I think the condemnation of property, even though the facts and circumstances here that the property is not owned by any other individual that we can identify, I would be more comfortable for the city if we actually had it as an agenda item rather than something that was added to your agenda this evening, just so that we are as transparent as we can be about the process.
I like that.
Yeah.
So could I have a motion to table it?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Number 5, the city council will consider going into executive session for the purpose of consulting the city attorney concerning the Xperia appeal and the state board property tax review decision to change the value of the mill for the city assessment. Councilor May.
Are we supposed to go up to that
Right,
first?
this one.
What's that?
That was,
Took that off because he met with him. You got an email about it?
okay, all right.
Okay. Resolve, the Old Town City Council hereby approves going into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA 4056E for the purpose of consulting with the city attorney concerning the Xperia appeal and the State Board of Property Tax Review decision to change the value of the mill for the city assessment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Let's go.
Take 5.
You do,